Welcome to Om Times TV, a division of Om Times Media and Broadcasting. Royce Morales is the founder and teacher of the Perfect Life Awakening program, author, columnist, and expert on mirroring. She empowers clients with her profound process that helps neutralize self-sabotage, shift stuck patterns and negative thinking by locating the origins of limiting, subconscious programmed beliefs. Live an authentic existence, discover your true purpose, connect with your higher consciousness, reset your life, transform from triggered to empowered, and attract what you truly desire and deserve by discovering what life is reflecting to you. Because it's all mirrors.
Hello, welcome to my show. It's all mirrors. And if you have been watching my show the last few weeks, you are inundated with mirroring concepts. And today is going to be probably, I think, one of the most important concepts to talk about: mirroring in relationships. You know, those people you're involved with. I find that there are several people in our lives that offer the biggest mirrors. We talked about one of them last time, children, and of course, parents. Oh boy. And the biggest, and I would say maybe even on the top level, is relationships, those intimate relationships that we have with our partners or with somebody that we're close to. And they really magnify stuff for us. They're magnifying all of our denial, all of our fear, all of our false beliefs, all of our programming, you name it, they are magnifying it. So why do we do that? Why do we need those magnifying mirrors, as I keep talking about? Because we want to wake up. We want to see our denial. We want to get in touch with what we've suppressed about ourselves. And those mirrors are the best tools and the best friends we've got. So I'm going to just kind of refresh everybody a little bit about mirroring. I'm going to pull up my slides just to remind you. And then I'm going to get into talking about specifically relationships. So as I'm sure you remember, because I keep saying it, mirrors are like seesaws. Whatever you're pushing down, ignoring, denying, or running from will always come up in some way. It's the law of energy. Nothing can be suppressed. So you push down one side, the other side comes up. So let's go to the next slide. Somewhere. There it is. And the mirror rule of thumb, how do you recognize mirrors? So easy. Whenever a button is pushed, whenever you feel triggered, you feel angry, you feel upset, you feel jealous, you feel like storming out of a room, fight, flight, that shows you that something is being mirrored to you. Something about yourself is showing up in that other person or in that situation that's trying to say, hey, there's a mirror here. And I find, and nobody ever likes this, the louder you protest, oh, this couldn't possibly be my mirror, the more denial of what's being shown. And I know in those relationships, they're the best because they are just in your face with mirrors. So that's the reminder about mirrors. And let's talk specifically on the next slide about mirrors in relationships. Close relationships, as I said, are oftentimes your best mirrors. I don't know about you guys, but my husband, he's able to push the biggest and the deepest buttons. And I chose him on a spiritual level so that I could get in touch with what I'm denying. I thought it was just because he was cute and we had a fun time and we were very connected spiritually. Yes, all of that is true. But he helps me see my denial every single day of my relationship. And I'm going to tell you a story about that in a few minutes. So relationship mirrors show us our neediness, our belief, and this is such a strong belief that we have. Something external is going to make me happy, bring me security, make me lovable. So, 95% of the time or so, I just made up that statistic, we choose somebody that we really believe is going to fill our void. They're going to give us that sense of happiness that we couldn't find without that person. And sure, you're happy with your spouse or your mate or your dating partner, whatever it is. But the belief that I can't do that myself, I need somebody else to do that for me, to prove that I'm okay, to prove that I'm lovable. That's what our mirrors are showing us from relationships. They also expose our inauthenticity, our acts, all those things that we're pretending to be. They come crashing down pretty fast when you're in an intimate relationship. So let's talk about the next slide. And here it is, slowly. Okay, neediness mirrors. If you have a belief that you are missing a particular quality, you're going to start feeling needy of that quality in your life. So let's say you believe that you are missing, fun. You just can't have fun. You don't feel like you have that quality of being able to relax and have fun. So you need somebody to bring you fun. You feel needy of that quality, and you might attract somebody with that missing piece, but guess what? Eventually, that quality is going to push your buttons, and you may try to get them to change. You may try to manipulate them. My own story, I'm going to tell you lots of stories about my relationships today. I really felt as though I am a very serious person. Here I am, a spiritual teacher and doing this serious work. Excuse me. And what attracted me to my husband to be was the fact that he was fun and wacky and goofy, and he was just silly all the time. Loved that part of him. However, in about a month after we got married, that part of him drove me crazy. I started bitching at him, saying, "Why can't you ever be serious?" And then I tried to change him, and I tried to really get him to be serious. So what he was mirroring to me, and this is a little bit tricky, he was mirroring to me the part of me that believed that I really am a silly person, but I'm not okay with it, and I've suppressed it. I've knocked it out of the park in my life. So I can't be silly. I get somebody else to be silly. They drive me crazy because they're showing me a mirror of what I have suppressed about myself, because I judged that part of me. So I hope that makes sense. Let's talk about the next one. So this one is really important, and I'm going to get into some details about deservingness. So whatever we want from someone else, we actually want from ourselves, but we believe on some level that we can't give it to ourselves. Why? Because we don't feel deserving. Deservingness issues are the core of every single issue that we've got. And when you start seeing how all pervasive that deservingness issue is, you're going to be blown away, because it kind of leaks into everything. So, silly example, let's say I believe I really want my husband to bring me flowers on my birthday. And for whatever reason, I believe I can't give that to myself. I don't deserve to give that to myself. So I want him to give it to me. And guess what? He may not give it to me, or he does give it to me. And I still feel like, well, I had to ask, and I had to beg for it, and I had to leave notes reminding him that it was my birthday. So it's never going to be enough. But the real issue is I don't deserve to give flowers to myself, or whatever flowers symbolize. Maybe it's just something nurturing that I want to give myself, and I don't believe I deserve that. So that's really big. And I'm going to lead right into a little bit more about deservingness, which is, again, like I said, the core of what I talk about and the core of all of our issues. So let's go to that next slide. Buttons and triggers are fear. So, button gets pushed, you feel triggered, you're thrown into a primitive state of reactiveness. Negative emotions arise, but what's underneath all of those negative emotions, whatever they are, is fear. Fear is hidden. The primitive part of us does not like to admit that we have fear. So it pushes it down, and we act like we're angry. We push down our fear, and we act like we're jealous. All of those things are covering up fear. And the core, and this one is really tough, so I hope you've listened to all of my other talks about mirroring, because it'll make sense then. But the core of all of our buttons is always about fear of losing or having love. Okay, I'll repeat that because it's so big. So when you push my button and I'm noticing that I'm having anger, I'm starting to see that the anger is just fear. And what am I afraid of? I'm afraid that I lost your love. But really, what I'm really afraid of is having love. And let's talk about that on the next slide. And by the way, it can be fear of success, fear of money, all kinds of fears. So fear of having love. There's a deep subconscious part of us that is terrified of love. It looks like we're afraid of losing love, but it actually goes a lot deeper. The deeper fear is having love. Why do we fear having love? Doesn't that sound silly? Why would we be afraid of having love? It seems like that's all we want in life. Yeah. However, on a lower consciousness, fear-based, primitive level, it would mean that if I suddenly had love, that means I deserve it. I don't believe I deserve it. There's a deep part of us way down there in the subconscious part of us that says, oh no, you don't deserve love. Look at all the stuff you've done in the past. Look at how terrible you are. Look at, all of that stuff. So Fear of having love is a statement of me not believing that I deserve. And that goes way back, like I said. And if you believe in past lives, we bring a lot of that with us, all of that guilt, all of that lack of deservingness. And on the little bottom line there, it says fear of having love really translates into fear of being loved. So we don't believe that about ourselves, even though that is truly who we are. We are love, but we don't believe that because of all the stuff we haven't remembered and cleaned up and suppressed and denied about ourselves. So that's the big one. That's the core. That's the key. I do find in my own life that recognizing that syndrome going on, the fear of having love syndrome, has saved my marriage probably hundreds of times. Every time my wonderful husband pushes a button and shows me my denial, what I get to see is, oh, wow, he's just showing me how I believe I don't deserve love. And once I get that, once I understand that, and I'll tell you a story about that too in a second, everything kind of shifts. And here's my story. I might as well tell you now. We got married very quickly. We had known each other for a few years, but when we realized that we were in love with each other, we got married about 3 weeks later. And there we were on our honeymoon in a hotel room. And I looked at him and I thought, holy shit, what have I done? I just married this guy. He's wacky. He's younger than me. What was I thinking? I mean, my brain started going berserk, and I pulled away and I started to freak out and I started to cry. And luckily my husband he was one of my students originally, and he figured out that there must be something going on. So he started asking me questions very lovingly, full of compassion. Eventually I realized that I don't deserve this. It's not anything. I wasn't afraid of him. I was afraid of the fact that he represented somebody that loved me 100% completely. And I did not deserve that. And once I got in touch with that and discovered the source of that, poof, it all lifted off. And we've been married for 38 years ever since. So it's so huge. And you can be as quick as that, just recognizing, oh, it's just fear of having love. Okay, I get it. So I think there might be one more slide there, maybe. Don't remember anymore. Yes, there we go. The more love we have, the more fear comes up. So again, you can replace the word love with success, power, etc. Every time you get a raise, every time somebody loves you more, every time you have a wonderful weekend with somebody and you experience more love, fear comes up. I found that every time my husband and I would go out and have a really nice evening, we would come home, we'd get in a fight. So finally realized, oh, that's because more love came up and I really don't deserve it. Oh, let's get rid of it. Let's sabotage it because I don't believe I deserve it. So I think that is the last slide. And if so, let me introduce my wonderful, amazing co-host for today, Marilyn Hager. Where is she? There she is. Hi, Marilyn. I'm so glad you're here. Uh-oh, we can't hear you.
I'm so glad to be here. I've
You go.
Missed you so much.
Missed you too. Well, let me tell everybody about you. First of all, Marilyn, I've known Marilyn for a long time. She's taken every single class I could ever imagine offering, every retreat. She also did my Perfect Life Awakening intern program. So she's a graduate practitioner of the PLA methods, along with all kinds of other stuff that she does. And let me just read her bio here. She is a graduate of, she's an international woman-centered institute faculty coach, facilitator, and leader specializing in supporting women to release hidden barriers to thriving. She helps them tap into their unique wisdom, talents, and deepest desires to live their most fruitful and soul-inspired life. She also helps heart-centered women magnetize soulmate love as well as messaging that attracts clients and business partnerships for women-centered coaches and soul-driven ventures. Wow, that is awesome.
It's a mouthful.
It is. I'm like, ugh. So tell us how you got started. What drew you to be doing all of this amazing stuff, mostly for women, it seems.
Yes, yes. Well, I started doing this right after I sort of said, okay, I've done a lot with you, Royce. I need to like ground this in a different way. I need to spread things out. I love the multidimensionality of really, stepping into beliefs. And I met Claire Zammit, who is the founder of the Women-Centered Coaching Reality. And so I got all this sort of more tangible, like marketing and different steps than what you did. So I just wanted to flourish and thrive around that as well. And I also really wanted to stay inside of the multidimensional because I think your work is very multidimensional, and that's what I love about it. It's sort of my innate wisdom comes from there. So I also got involved with the 13 Moon Priestess work. So I get to do all of that fun stuff using your techniques, using her techniques, and using the innate wisdom that I already have. Wow. Is that a good explanation?
Yeah. And I think what you said to me at one point is you wanted to go more mainstream with it.
Yes.
Which is so valuable. That's so valuable.
Yeah.
So we were talking the other day, and you shared with me a great example of mirroring, even just kind of on a surface level, how you got in touch with and sort of shifted some beliefs that you had about men. Would you mind sharing that story? It was so profound.
Yes. So the belief that I decided to work on, was men don't support me when I'm powerfully tapped into my innate gifts. And the false evidence that was appearing real is it started in this lifetime with my father, who favored my sister. And he often got triggered by my powerful, intuitive, multidimensional way of going and my sensitivities that I inherited from my mother and her lineage. So as an adult, I've searched for that support of the masculine through six deep and transformational male partnerships. I didn't stick with one. I've had 6. And the first was my high school sweetheart, who was with me, and we traveled together. It was wonderful. We busted a move from our family of origin and really got into some deep awareness for about 5 years. And the other 4 were husbands. And each time, whenever there was a conflict, the mirror of false evidence appearing real was a deep-seated belief that I can't depend upon men to support me. And that started with my father and probably, lots of other dimensions of times when, fear got in the way. So do you want me to share the story that I told you about?
I would love to.
Do you want to ask anything else before that, or?
No, continue. It's really interesting.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love this story because it really illustrates the pathway to breaking this up. So in June of 2014, a little over 10 years ago, I co-created a Feminine Power Heroine's Journey with another one of my sister coaches. And we went to Zion National Park. This dear friend of mine, her name is Prim Glidden. And similar to your work, Royce, the self-actualization focus of the then Feminine Power, it's now called Women-Centered Coaching, it focuses on revealing the underlying roadblocks in our subconscious awareness that keep us stuck in an endless cycle of fear, confusion, and dissatisfaction. And so there were 6 women on this journey, including Prem and me, and all of us were near our 6th decade or older. So we were up there. And those of us whose body was in better shape supported the other. So we each took a partner. when we went on this particular journey. And like all transformational work, we set an intention for the retreat. And my intention was to do whatever it took to break up the belief that men don't support me. And the breakthrough happened to me during the threshold activity near the end of the journey when we hiked up to Angel's Landing in Zion. Mm-hmm. So the challenge of Angel's Landing is you climb all the way up, and it's a steep 1,000-foot pinnacle. So you go from the bottom to the top, and it's 1,000 feet with a flat top, and then you return to the bottom. And my co-facilitator, Prim, had been to Zion and hiked Angel's Landing many times, so she led the pack, which I was so grateful for. We had 6 paired up for the hike, and I supported a dear friend of mine, Patricia, who was originally my coaching client and almost immediately became my dear, also very multidimensional sister. And she was 71 and had difficult knees and lung issues. So our journey was slower than others. And because of that, it was also very magical. So Zion is so multidimensionally powerful. There's a hike through an incredible canyon before Angel's Landing. That was so inspiring. And because we were walking slowly because of how slowly she needed to walk, we got into a real attunement with the environment, and there were faces and sometimes almost perceptual ancient voices whispering from the rock walls. You know how rocks can like have pictures in them? And that felt really supportive and beckoning us forward. So near the end of the first phase of the upward trek is a switchback because it is so steep. And it allows you more ease, and it brings you to a flattened area called Scout's Landing. Well, Patricia was ecstatic to have gotten there and decided that was far enough, and she needed to stay. And she guarded our packs from all these chipmunks that said, "Ooh, packs, I know there's stuff in there." So she was constantly shooing them away. So the rest of us went ahead on up, and it was the ascent up to Angel's Landing was very challenging for me. I had done endurance training, but fear was in my face as we traveled along the pathway against a wall, mainly of the pinnacle, with maybe a 12 to 16 inch walkway at nearly 1,000 feet up, that if you fell off, that would be it. You would just, and fortunately, and probably smartly, the Park Service had bolted a heavy chain to the side of the wall that I clung to. I was like, while making the ascent. And then when we all got up there, we were so ecstatic. And the view there was so amazing. There were other mountain walls close by to the sides of us, and that sort of felt nurturing, like the other mountains were nurturing us. But before us was a vast, expansive valley with a river. I think it's a pretty big river that looked like a little stream, like a little line. So that's how high up we were and how far away it was. And it's a perfect name for the top of the mountain. It really does feel like you're with angels. It really does. It feels like you're, whoa, you're at the top of the mountain where you can reach out and commune with whatever you need to know. And when we were finally filled up by the experience, we started our descent. I was feeling so powerful and so empowered. And the first part of the descent was also challenging because it was going down a very slippery slope, smooth rock pathway that was really open. And fortunately, there were also chains to hold there, and we were all ecstatic. So not far from the top of Angel's Landing, the pathway opened up a little bit where you could rest. And when I reached the open area, I was feeling so empowered. I noticed a woman standing against the wall looking really afraid and forlorn. And my energy was like, coach, 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 help, help, help her. And I said, oh, sweetheart, you're okay. And I was energetically reaching out to support her and took my attention away from myself just long enough to not notice a barely exposed rounded rock at the bottom of the slope. And as I stepped on it, my left foot slid across the sand and turned over completely. Popped really loudly, and I buckled to the ground. I was like, ooh, oh dear. And I thought, powers that be? See, it's not safe to extend myself and be a powerful support to myself. See, this is evidence. This is the evidence. I'm not supported. I can't extend. I can't be in my powerful feminine way. And the universe doesn't support me. And no sooner had I finished that thought, I noticed that there was a young man next to the forlorn woman who must have been her guide. And he reached into his backpack and he pulled out some tape and scissors. But he didn't really know what to do with them. And so, okay, thank you. And just then 2 other young men and a woman came down the slope. And the first man who came down said, oh, what's going on here? He saw my foot and he's like, oh, I'm a trainer for a Schedule I women's soccer team in Colorado. You can't make this up. He checked my ankle and determined it wasn't broken, and he taped it up as if I was going back into the game. So I had this like professional cast on my foot instantly. And then his friend was a fireman.
So funny. Wow.
Dun, 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 the masculine is here to save me. Oh, and he volunteered to guide me down the rest of the way to Scout's Landing. And there were some very exposed and open places where I needed him to guard me. I asked him to stand in front of me so that I could like against the wall. And then I felt really powerful after that. And I had really worked out. So I was strong upper body. And the way you went down, I could use my arms instead of my legs to get down the pathway. So,
wow.
Now look at that. My intention for the journey was to attune with the truth that men do support me, even when I'm experiencing my own flavor of power. And lo and behold, there they were.
There they were.
My angels at the top of the landing.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. So, what do you want to say about that?
I want to say that the universe certainly provided instant proof that your belief was false.
I want to say that too.
Yeah, that's
and I think the power of, leaving no stone unturned, really, to discover the truth is really what this work is all about. And that false evidence appearing real wasn't real, right? Yeah.
So if you were my student, I would then be saying to you, okay, so let's find the origin of where that belief started. So that would be the work that we would do. But it certainly, got your attention by proving to you that it was a false belief. That's awesome. Yeah. So why don't we take a little break? Gosh, half hour goes so fast. Take a little break, and then we'll come back and talk to Marilyn Hager a little bit more. I'm sure you have more stories you can share of mirrors in relationships, since you had 6 really juicy ones, as you like to call them. We'll be right back.
Thank you, Royce.
Times TV. Do you want to break free from old patterns and limiting beliefs that subconsciously sabotage your life? What are your triggers, and what really is beneath them? Are you seeking answers to life's big questions, intrigued by the possibility of self-discovery that goes deep? Looking for tools to help you break free from hidden sources of feeling stuck, confused, and unworthy? Perfect Life Awakening takes you on an epic inner adventure that shifts your perception of yourself, others, and life permanently. Identify and overcome the origins of subconscious triggers and limiting beliefs holding you back. That's how you transform your mindset from the roots. That's how you liberate your spirit, awaken your intuition, and discover your true purpose. Dive deep into the mysteries held within. Embark on a life-altering journey of self-discovery. Be a trailblazer within your own life. Go from triggered to empowered because you deserve a perfect life awakening. Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. Om Times Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, Om Times offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an Om Times magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on Om Times TV and broadcasting it across the extensive Om Times radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. Om Times. Open yourself to the possibilities.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize, and accuse. Walk a mile in my shoes.
Welcome back. I am talking with Marilyn Hager, amazing Marilyn Hager. Just told a story about how the universe said, here's a false belief. Take a look at it. Yeah. So it's always interesting. The universe is such an interesting place. I always kind of ponder, what am I going to talk about on my show? And what questions am I going to ask? And oh my God. So I opened my email this morning and I get quotes of the day. And this quote is just so perfect. Love makes your soul crawl out from its hiding place. I just love that. That's by Zora Neale Hurston. She's an author. So it makes our soul crawl out from our hiding place. It really does. So I was thinking about, some of you may know that my husband is now disabled. He had a massive stroke 10 years ago. And I was thinking about, gosh, what could that be a mirror of? And of course, I did some inner work pretty shortly after it happened because I knew that this must be something really big for me. And what I got in touch with, I actually wrote a whole book about it. But what I got in touch with was how our relationship stems back several lifetimes. This is not our first rodeo, and we've known that. We've worked on that together. But what came to me loud and clear was that every lifetime he had been the one that was taking care of me. We arrived here with that was his role, taking care of me. And in this life, that is not going to happen because he's disabled now. And it took me a while to stop resisting that change in the role, but I had to see that it was a gift that he was giving me to allow me to know that not only could I take care of him, but I could take care of us. I could take care of everything, including what I do. And it was so profound. It just shifted everything in my relationship with him. And I stopped resenting, oh, I have to take care of a disabled husband now. It was really phenomenal. So even things like that that, wow, that's a big one, is showing a mirror of something. Have you had things like that happen to you, Marilyn?
Well, a little bit, not as extreme as you, but my present husband is about 4 years older than I am, and he is a very strong man, and I was really attracted to that, and he's very physical and very capable in the world. And about, I don't know, 3 years into our marriage or so, he his left arm kept falling asleep at night,
Mm.
and then it kept falling asleep all day. And so we went to the doctor, and they found out he had spinal stenosis in his neck. And so they took like 4 or 5 of the vertebrae processes, spinous processes, the back of your neck, out. They took them out, off of his head neck.
Wow.
So that he isn't really handicapped, but he's in a lot of pain a lot of the time. And he's such a trooper. He still works really hard. We're working on our house. He's really working on our house to sell it so that we can live closer to our children in Colorado. And there's this sort of energetic where there's a little bit of pressure to try to get it done. And sometimes he like feels fearful. I'm sure that's what it is. And he like gets impatient with himself that he's not doing it right or whatever. And sometimes that triggers me. It's like, oh, there's that energy again. I don't want to be around it. Stop doing that. And then and then sometimes I'm able to say, I wonder what the fear is. And I just ask him to please turn inside and see what's going on. And we've processed together a little bit, not like you and Michael. But when I'm able to not get triggered because I get afraid, if he's acting that way, I know there's, oh no, is he going to be okay? There's this like little edge of he wasn't okay a bunch of different times because other things happened to him because of all the drugs he was taking and ulcers and all these old man things. And we're not getting any younger, so things are going to still keep happening. So being the caretaker most of the time, he won't let me be because he's very proud and he's very manly, and he does need me to, which actually has given us sort of a sweetness to our relationship. When you care for someone else and they're in pain, there's a sweetness. Sometimes there's a frustration, but when the fear leaves, there's a sweetness and a tenderness about, I know you're in pain. What's going on? Can you tell me? Can you talk to me about it? Can you figure out why you're being triggered? I don't really coach him. He doesn't really like that, but just a few little kind words and a reminder to like look inside. What's going on here? I mean, that thing on the wall isn't really what it is. What's really going on? So I love it that he hasn't taken your classes and he's still open to growing and evolving. That's kind of why I fell in love with him, because I saw that pretty early on in our relationship. I don't know if that answers what you're saying, but that's my...
Yeah. Well, it kind of leads me into another question, and this is something I've learned the hard way, shall we say, with my husband, excuse me, and that is, even though he's taken my classes and he knows all of this stuff, excuse me, if I notice that he is in a button or he's triggered in some way, and I try to say to him, so what's the mirror?
No, don't say it that way.
Even if I said it nicely and very teacherly and very sweetly, it's still no.
Yeah.
So what do you, I mean, I've learned that I just don't do that. And I trust him. He's able to do that himself.
Yeah.
And what I do is I look within on my end. Okay. So he's acting out on his button, and I immediately look at mine. What is he showing me about myself? What have I pushed down that he's being the other side of the seesaw about? and I just acknowledge what's coming up for me. And it opens the space for him to acknowledge what's going on for him.
Right.
Do you guys do that kind of stuff too?
Well, I don't think we do it consciously, or I do it myself. I don't think he knows to do that for sure. He doesn't really have the technique down, but he does, he does respond when I do it in a loving way. And I recognize, oh, he's struggling and we need to get the house done. And I can't do what he's doing. And I start to get afraid, like, oh, this isn't really going to manifest. So when I go back in and feel into my fear and recognize that, it's all happening in perfect timing, and, I don't want to have any pressure on him. And although it is my house that we're living in and it's my investment, so I am very like, I don't want you to do it that way. And he doesn't like that. He's like the man and he knows how to do it. And so it's like, meh, meh, meh. It's very, it's very gingerly that we have to navigate that. And, he's like learning to let go because he's always been so independent about any project that he's done. So he's learning to partner with my needs and my sensibilities, and he won't like it at first, and then he will go do it and he'll say, oh, that did turn out nicely, so he'll acknowledge it. But when I do it from fear, it doesn't go very well.
Never does.
No. Because his fear gets, triggered, and it's like, let's be partners. Let's work this through in partnership. Let's really think about what we're doing, and, what's the best way to do this in our budget. And, he's wonderful. I love him so much. So such a great partner. Yeah. Mike, if you're listening, I love you.
Both married to Mike.
Mike too, I know.
So what about what I was talking about earlier about the fear of love, fear of the belief we have that we don't deserve to be loved and that we don't deserve to be loved? Have you noticed any of that going on in this relationship or in any relationship that you could tell us in terms of an example of that?
Well, I think the first time I felt that was with my father. I don't deserve to be loved. And it was such a mirror of that. Like and my mother even, you're the weird kid. I was the weird kid because I was so sensitive, so sensitive. And if anyone just sort of looked at me wrong, I'd start crying. But then as I got older, I was multidimensionally sensitive. Like I'd have dreams. In fact, one dream that I had was I was going to a place in the mountains where there was snow with a bunch of other people. I dreamed that in my dream. And it turns out a few weeks later, my father said, we're going to the mountains with a group of people.
Wow.
And where we went was Lake Gregory,
right
near you.
Yeah.
So I really started paying attention to my multidimensionality, and I started loving that I was that way. I couldn't help it. I was that way. And I feared my father and got away from him as soon as I could as I grew up. I could never do it right for him. My sister was more like him. I was soft and sensitive, and he was like, arr, 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 construction worker, So the energies didn't really bond, except there was a tender side to him. When we would watch shows like Lassie or something like that, he would cry.
Aw.
I know. And it was like, oh, there's a sensitive guy in there. And so he was like, that's not me. I'm the big strong guy,
Yeah. So back to my question. So I talked last time about children and how we choose our children choose us. It's a mutual choice. So what have you gotten in touch with in terms of why you would have chosen your dad to show you that mirror? putting you on the spot here.
Yeah. We should process this. There's a part of his way of being with me that was worried about me, worried about me being so soft and so sensitive. And there's a part of me that does that too. So there was a part of him that was also really sensitive. He actually grew up in an orphanage during the Great Depression. And so he had to like fight all the other boys because he's little. My father's much smaller than me. And so he showed me how resilient, you have to be when the circumstances, demand it. And I feel like that story of his and that way of being of his was really helpful to me. And also he's very funny. He was always telling jokes and I'm kind of silly. And so I kind of use that reflection of his to disarm the moment so that there's more of an authenticity. Yeah. If I get soft and silly, then this deep, heavy, sometimes heavy, powerful, painful, fearful work that we do, there's a little bit of a lightness that we can bring to it. Mm. And so I learned those skills from him. Yeah. As far, I haven't, I really need to process the other parts of it that are beyond where this mind can go to see that.
So did you, I always talk about how we attract whatever we need to learn in our relationships. Did you attract in those 6 main relationships in your life, did you attract some of that stuff so that you could look at it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think in every single one. There was a point in my life when, in my first relationship, it was really fun because we were breaking free of our families. And so we were both really interested in alternative things. And we left home and we learned so many different cool things. We moved to Santa Cruz, California, where it was happening. And but then in the end, it wasn't a forever relationship. And it was painful because it was first love. And we really loved each other very deeply. And yet it was, time to move on. And then in the second relationship, I got my daughter. And the man that I married then was narcissistic like my father. Mm-hmm. And so there was that attraction again. Let's work through some more things. Until finally I just said, no, we're not doing just what you want to do. You have a baby now. We can't travel all over the world looking for you to feel happy. And so I put my foot down. So that was me, learning to be in strength, even though it was hard. And the third relationship wasn't very long, but that was the relationship I got this house from. So, and he was slippery, and I didn't realize it. I don't know how that reflected my father, but there was a lot not being said until finally that ended. And then my fourth relationship, 1, 2, 3. Did I say 3 yet? My next relationship was Andrew, and Andrew, and he's a big teddy bear, and he loved to process. I mean, we were processing partners. He took classes with me, and I think a lot of work got done with him. He wasn't like my father at all. Most of the men weren't like my father. I said, no, I don't want that. I think what finally ended up happening is he loves to process, and he would come to me so excited, and he would say, Marilyn, I got this new insight. And he would say it, and I'm like, that's the same insight you've said 15 times already. How is that different? He said, well, it's different in this very minute way, So Yes and no. My father, they were men, they're all men. Most of them were softer than my father, though.
Mhm.
My husband now is maybe closest to my father because he can be volatile when he gets afraid, and especially if he's in pain. But interestingly enough, we grew up 12 miles away from each other and didn't know it. He was on one side of a freeway and I was on the other, and never the twain would meet. So we have a very similar background on that level. We grew up, he's only 4 years older, so he's the most like my father, and I use these tools to support us to get through those places where my father would trigger me.
Yeah.
And sometimes I don't. Sometimes I yell at him and write back. And sometimes I'm like, what's going on? You know, think about this. Let's feel into this. Let's sense into this.
Yeah.
Because I'm kind of bossy, especially with what's going on with the house, which is his real focus.
Yeah.
So I have to be really, have my opinion be what gets done, but in a way that has him feel empowered. So it's tricky.
Yeah. It's interesting as you're talking, I'm thinking about my own relationship with my husband now. And my mother and I had all kinds of issues. I mean, you name it, we had issues about everything. And my dad was this very quiet person in the background, never said anything, just was very loving, very caring, would always rescue me financially. I mean, he was just a great man. And I never thought I had issues with him. And guess what? My husband has a stroke and he has become my dad. He can't talk. Every part of him has become my dad. And I've had to look at that relationship now that it's shifted in that way. So it's really interesting, again, what the universe does. It's like, here, you need to look at stuff about your dad. So you have a husband that is just like your dad now. And, it's really interesting. So I know that we only have a couple minutes left. Why don't you tell us about how people can reach you and what your services are, and do a little shameless promotion? Go ahead.
Okay. If you want to know about the Feminine Power Heroine's Journey, I have a little page called fpheroinesjourney.com, where you can see pictures of where we were and what we were doing. And if you want to connect with me and what I'm up to, you can go to Marilyn Hager, which I don't know if it's written down somewhere.
Yes.
.com, marilynhager.com, and I have this very full website of all the fun things that I do. And I think at some point we're also going to be talking about this other aspect of me, and that is my work as a priestess. And so we'll save that for next time, but there's a lot of information about that on there as well. I love coaching women. I love depth work. I love that, yes, I know how to help you build your website. Yes, I know how to help you, whatever. On the multidimensional level, I love to help you break through what's in the way on an emotional level,
Yeah.
on a depth level, and then connect with the universe, connect with your unique expression of the life force energy.
Yes.
So that's what I love to do. And I got that from you. I got that from my earlier work with all the different spirituality things. And it's multidimensional. It's the juiciness of multidimensionality.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Marilyn Hager. It was
Thank
just
you so much, Joyce Morales.
it was a pleasure talking to you.
You too,
And
beautiful.
to remind everybody, it's all mirrors, and you're in the perfect relationship, whatever it is, however it looks. If you look at it in terms of what it's teaching you and all the mirrors that it's offering you. And I will see everybody in a week for my other show called the Perfect Life Awakening Show. And I hope everybody takes a look at those juicy mirrors in your life. Thank you.
All right. Mwah.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Elevate your life.